I'm getting sick and tired of the fact that every time when Cyril Ramaphosa is speaking to the nation, there is chaos. And this time, after his so-called family gathering on Sunday, he again uttered the phrases, they are busy investigating and looking at making vaccines for COVID-19 mandatory. And we've been inundated with phone calls and emails asking us, when is this going to happen? How can we prevent this? Etc. etc. Now, I'm going to repeat again what I've said before. There is no such thing as mandatory vaccination policies or even law currently in South Africa. Not only the Constitution, but several international laws and charters that we have subscribed to, above others, the African Charter and the UNESCO Declaration, specifically prohibit us as members to force any one of our citizens to undergo any forced medical intervention or receive vaccines or anything relating to that. So, in order for South Africa to implement a so-called mandatory vaccination law, they must firstly change the constitution. Secondly, they must stop to be members of both the United Nations and the African Union and other structures similar like them as well. So it is not possible at present, hence the reason why the government has been implementing so-called mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy laws in disguise, like with what has happened on the 11th of June when the Minister of Labour and of Employment and Labour has issued those guidelines. Go and listen to what I had to say about that specific guideline in part 2 of our series on COVID-19 vaccination policies. Now, the other thing that is coming up, let me just clear this. So, people, South Africa must go a very long way in order to legitimize forced or compulsory or mandatory COVID-19 vaccination laws. They cannot, in the legal framework currently provided, they cannot do it. They physically need to change the constitution and they physically need to unsubscribe to the United Nations and the African Union above others, as I've cleared it up. Then the issue surrounding universities. We have received also plenty of complaints regarding universities, the University of the Free State, University of Northwest, University of Stellenbosch, University, Johannesburg University, and so the list goes on, have implemented mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policies at their workplaces beginning from January. Now, yes, it does affect the employees, and which policies are totally illegal, as we have clarified in our series dealing with these mandatory policies. But specifically, students have been requested that they need to be vaccinated in order to use these facilities on the university campuses as well. People, it cannot happen. It's also illegal for the very reason that there's one act which is totally discarded, and that is the Consumer Protection Act of 2008. Now, I'm going to clarify a few aspects in relation to the Consumer Protection Act with you concerning universities specifically. I'm going to put on my spectacles, otherwise I cannot see. But I would like to emphasize the following to you. Number one, when one goes to the definition of service provider, what is a service in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, one would note that the following is said. Number one, very, very quickly, what is a service? When you go to the definition of service in the Consumer Protection Act and paragraph B specifically, it says that service includes but is not limited to, paragraph B, the provision of any education. That's above others. Then when one goes back to whether it applies to the state or to universities, then one needs to go to paragraph 5 thereof, and then paragraph 5 specifically says at the bottom thereof that the application of this act in terms of subsections 1 to 7 extends to a matter irrespective of whether the supplier, paragraph C thereof, is an individual, juristic person, partnership, trust, organ of state, an entity owned or directed by an organ of state, a person contracted or licensed by an organ of state to offer or supply any goods or services, or is a public-private partnership. It does refer to and apply to the state as well. So whether it's an university that is governed or instituted or funded by the government, it's totally irrelevant. It does apply to universities and even to your schools, people. For any parent, it is imperative for you. It's very, very important that you go and study the Consumer Protection Act of 2008, because it's not only the Schools Act that applies to the operation of your school. Directly, the Consumer Protection Act is also applicable to it. And what is very important here, people, Chapter 2 of the Consumer Protection Act, it says the following, and I'm going to read it to make provision for those who also cannot hear. Protection against discriminatory marketing, that is Chapter 2, Part A of Consumer Protection Act. So I'm going to emphasize some of these clauses here. Subject to Section 9, a supplier of goods or services must not unfairly exclude any person or category of persons from accessing any goods or services offered by the supplier. Grant any person or category of persons exclusive access to any goods or services offered by the supplier. Assign priority of supply of any goods or services offered by the supplier to any person or category of persons. Supply a different quality of goods or services to any person or category of persons. Charge different prices for any goods or services to any person or category of persons. Target particular communities, districts, populations, or market segments for exclusive priority or preferential supply of any goods or services, or exclude a particular community, district, population, or market segment from the supply of any goods or services offered by the supplier on the basis of one or more grounds of unfair discrimination contemplated in Section 9 of the Constitution or Chapter 2 of the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act. Now it goes on. So people, when you look within these areas of discrimination where suppliers and service providers may not discriminate against you, then basically you will see that you cannot have a policy at the university, for example, whereby you are only going to give access to the facilities to those who are vaccinated and leave out the unvaccinated group. People who are falling within the brackets of not subscribing to be vaccinated at present, you are part of a group. So you are clearly being outlined as, as a group against which service providers and also suppliers and retailers are currently discriminating against. So people, this is totally not allowed. If you experience any of these problems with a university or with a retailer or whoever, please communicate with us. Send us an email to legal@libertyfighters.co.za. We will be able to advise you on it. And yes, people, Liberty Fighters Network is currently in the process to challenge the various universities which have these policies. So we even have institutions where famous people like Professor Abdul Karim is managing, who are asking us to assist them to fight their mandatory policies. So yes, we are actively working on it. We will give you proper feedback as it goes along, but please just give us the time and opportunity to do it for you, and we will then report back on a Friday regarding everything that we have achieved. So stay safe, continue fighting, continue being activists. Don't stop to be disobedient. People, the only way in which we can fight these demons is at the end of the day to stop being obedient to all these ridiculous human rights abusing measures. Yes, respect those who really believe that they have contracted COVID-19 or have been victims of it in the one or other way. Respect them. Keep your social distancing. Don't be in the areas. If they fear to contract COVID-19, let them be. But you don't have to be forced to comply to any one of these things. It's your choice, it's your body, it is your dignity which is then being infiltrated and violated. Thank you very much for subscribing to our channel, and also please like this video if you think that it is valuable to share, and also kindly ring the bell if you'd like to have to get notifications